There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Hey, that would be me. Welcome inside edition number 229 unofficially of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat, presented by my friends at Beans Coffee Company. It is the Gophers review and preview week. Gophers coming off, or I should say edition, Gophers coming off of a 27-0 win over Nevada, and they are now knee-deep in preparation for the Iowa Hawkeyes at 6:30 p.m. at Huntington Bank Stadium this Saturday. Daniel House from Gophers Guru in just moments.
Gets it off in time and picked off by Minnesota's Kerry Brown.
I'll give Kerry Brown all the love that he deserves and play that one again.
Lewis again to throw. Gets it off in time and picked off by Minnesota's Kerry Brown. Roseberry's got options and he finds Taylor into the end zone. Minnesota finds the end zone for the first time on the afternoon.
Those highlights courtesy of our friends at Big Ten Network. Daniel House, funny what happens when you force a few turnovers. You get the ball moving in the air a little bit. You get the ball moving on the ground a little bit. You win a game comfortably against an opponent everybody believes you should have beat comfortably. And you know what, Daniel? Feeling a little bit better 2+ weeks removed from losing to North Carolina. Gophers did exactly what they needed to do against Rhode Island and Nevada. And we'll look forward to and talk about Iowa here in just a little bit. But first off, good to have you back, as always, for the Gopher Review and Preview edition and your general thoughts on Gophers and Nevada this past Saturday.
I thought the defense did a good job of taking away some of the things Nevada like to do schematically. I put a big piece out on that yesterday. Pressure stuff gave them a ton of fits. Their protections, they were having a lot of trouble with that. Couldn't really adjust to it. Hadn't played a defense like that was giving them those type of looks. They really exposed the right side of that offensive line. I thought Nevada looked tired. I thought, they played at Troy down in Alabama in a hot game, went back home, ran a whole bunch of plays on offense. I think it was like almost 80 plays offensively that previous week. I just thought they weren't very physical up front. And then offensively, I thought Minnesota, as the game progressed, showing the ability to hit those zone windows, stretch the field vertically with that seam shot to Gears, that 2-minute drill right before half. That was one of the better 2-minute drills the Gophers have had in quite some time. And then being able to eventually pop off an explosive run. I thought that the offense showed that it's going to continue to be kind of that, willing to throw to the back, quick game type of deal, using that as an extension of the rushing attack when they're maybe not running the ball at the level that they need to because you're getting stacked boxes.
So we all have nightmares at times, and we not all of us will talk about them, but I'm just going to guess that Brendan Lewis's nightmare until the day he dies is going to be maroon and gold jerseys, having now lost to the Gophers twice, being shut out, once quarterback in Colorado a few years back, and now Nevada by a final score of 57-0 when you combine the two scores. Yeah, I think it's just an interesting factoid more than anything, but the poor kids played the Gophers twice, playing for two different universities, and his offenses just really haven't done anything. I'm not putting that on him. It's just a very interesting factoid and something I didn't even know or pay attention to until the game was winding down on Saturday. But I ask this to you, Daniel House. How much of that Gophers game plan could have been gleaned from what the Gophers did against Colorado a few years prior when they went out to Boulder and won 30-0? How much was taken from that, if anything at all?
Absolutely. A lot of coverage disguise, baiting into mistakes. I mean, you look at that interception by Kerry Brown, the second one, that was a little bit of a new package that they put in with the dime stuff this year. They got 6 DBs on the field, and you got Kerry Brown kind of robbing and buzzing on the post route, makes a great play. It just baits him into that mistake. Changing the picture, making him process and find the windows is exactly kind of the type of scheme that they've had in the past. They had a lot of underneath defenders, so you're playing like with 3 or 4 underneath guys to help you in the quarterback scramble game, because I think that was the big deal with their offense, was him being able to make some plays with his legs to keep drives alive, and then that option game, being able to keep that in check. I didn't think like schematically Nevada did as much of that, because they got into a negative game script and you got them in a spot where they had to throw the football, and that's when the pass rush took over, and where I thought you saw the physicality of Minnesota just sort of overwhelm Nevada to the point where they had no chance.
Offensively, total yardage 386 for the Gophers to 172 in favor of Nevada, or for Nevada, I should say. Early on in the game, Daniel, and we noticed this, I think, against North Carolina for much of the game. It was better in the second half. Rhode Island, it's just really kind of tough to tell what you were watching. Still feels like the Gophers' offensive line is getting beat a little bit at the point of attack, or just maybe not opening the type of holes you would expect to see from a Gopher offensive line. Is that a fair assessment from my seat in Section 235?
Well, I believe there's a lot of teams now going, well, Minnesota, they know their identity in the past is to run the football, and they're dedicating their schemes around that. They're rolling safeties down. They've got boxes stacked, and they're saying, okay, now your quick game is going to have to help you out. And I think Minnesota's done a good job of pivoting to that, hitting the check down to get 5 yards and put yourself in a better position on second down. Early down efficiency has been better, and they've been able to stay on schedule offensively, which has put them in more favorable down and distance situations. I do see there's occasionally, missed assignments up front, but some of that is related to scheme things. Other times it's execution. Like, you can't pinpoint play to play. It's a different thing each time. But I think now it becomes really important that you're going to have to, when you're playing these fast, long, powerful defenses like you're going to get here with Iowa this week, I mean, you're going to have to be able to get creative and find ways to run the football. It feels like they've been kind of, shelving some things from a run game standpoint that maybe they'll be able to unfurl here in the Big Ten slate. I think it's nice they're playing Iowa in the first Big Ten game. I mean, normally you got all this, stuff on film. Really, you don't have too much out there, because you've been very intentional about how you're approaching scheming before conference play.
Before we really break down Iowa and Minnesota, Saturday, 6:30, Huntington Bank Stadium. A reminder, that is Daniel House from Gophers Guru. I am Ross Brendel. Daniel House is on the X Machine at Daniel House MN. The website is gophersguru.com. You can find me on the X Machine at the Ross Brendel. If you're watching on YouTube, I encourage you to comment, like this video, subscribe, no matter how you're watching or listening to the pod. Maybe you're on Apple or Spotify. Please rate, review if you can do that. Tell your family and friends all about the pod. I really do appreciate that. And a reminder, as we record this podcast, I am actually sipping on some Beans coffee from my friends at Beans Coffee Company. They've been supporting Minnesota Sports Chat for over a few years now. Do me a favor, if you don't mind, take a few seconds, go to coffeebybeans.com. That's coffeebybeans.com. Once you're there, if you're a coffee drinker, I know you're going to see something you want to try. And once you do that, you're likely to keep going back to them, because the coffee is that good. I know you're going to find something that you like, and it'll be great. It'll be fantastic. It'll be the best coffee you've ever had in your life. That is a awful Donald Trump impression. Visit coffeebybeans.com. That is coffeebybeans.com. Use the promo code SportsChat. That is SportsChat to save at checkout. Again, coffeebybeans.com. I typically, keep it I'm pretty standard with my Profectus blend and my Mikado, but truth be told, and I would say this, if there was one, I haven't had a coffee there that I disapprove of. So coffeebybeans.com, promo code SportsChat. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm cheersing you right now with my really old and Daniel House almost deteriorating hydro flask. You ever looked inside one of these things after putting nothing but coffee in it for years on end?
No, I haven't.
At this point, I'm pretty sure I'm drinking aluminum. So I
Wow.
think this thing needs to be replaced in the very near future. One thing the Gophers hope isn't replaced, bad segue, something else or no space in the trophy room. That's just an awful segue. Long story short, they're hoping to keep Floyd of Rosedale in the state of Minnesota. And Daniel House, I'm just going to throw this out there. I'll get my prediction out of the way, and then we'll go into more of an in-depth breakdown. For no reason, Daniel, the Gophers are going to win this game, and they're going to win it easily. I just have a weird feeling, and people can laugh at weird feelings all they want. But I told the world on 1500 ESPN last Thursday that the Vikings would beat the 49ers 23-16. And Daniel, what was the final score? 23-17.
23-17.
Yeah. So I'm on a streak right now. I'm on a heater, as the kids would say. I don't have a final score prediction, but I think the Gophers are going to win by 2 scores. It's time. I think Iowa's the better team, but it's just time for the Gophers to win one of these games and do it mildly convincingly. At some point, the Kirk Ferentz thing is going to come to an end at Iowa, and one way to do that is to lose multiple rivalry games in a year, do it in a month, really get the Iowa City faithful stirred up. I think Iowa's good. I don't think they're dramatically better than Minnesota. And Daniel, I don't know if you saw this. Have you looked at the ESPN matchup predictor?
I haven't. Let me take a guess.
Do you want to guess?
I
Please
think
guess.
I think they'll have Iowa at 55%.
This is incredible. I've never seen this. And again, jokingly, you and I talk about this every week. I don't know what this means. I just like to bring it up because I honestly don't know what this means, right?
Yeah.
50.1% chance for the Hawkeyes to win, 49.9%
I mean,
for the Gophers.
I looked at some models and they were like 18-17 final.
I haven't seen an over-under. We're recording this on Tuesday morning. Have you seen an over-under? I've seen a spread. I was favored by 2.5.
I think it's 37.5 last I saw.
Okay.
Let me see here.
Yeah, I mean I can see that, but I'll take the over this year. But
well,
you can
honestly, like stylistically, these offenses are a little different than when they played each other last year, and they're honestly similar. You got Tim Lester, who takes over as Iowa's OC, who Greg Harbaugh worked for at Western Michigan. And you see some of the elements that, like, there's some crossover in what they do, which I think helps Minnesota in a sense that they've gone up against that scheme in practice. And Iowa's kind of done the same thing. So, like, it's going to be an interesting game because stylistically, like, offensively, they're kind of similar in a sense because there's been a little bit of an evolution in a sense just from what we saw in the non-conference slate. Who knows what's going to happen when conference games are played, but there's been a little evolution there.
Well, on both teams, Daniel, 2-1 with similar paths. The losses happened at different times of the season here early on, but both teams, in all honesty, Daniel, got 2 wins against teams you would expect them to beat. Both teams lost games against, I don't know, equal or fairly equal competition that I think Iowa would say we should have beaten Iowa State. They had a lead late and couldn't hold on. And I think Minnesota, most people around Minnesota would say they should have beat North Carolina. So it's just very interesting that both teams, having played 3 games, are facing the exact same situation at this point in the season when they meet on Saturday night.
Yeah, and it's fascinating in the sense that you watch Iowa's games back, and, you know, I was interested because I always love reading people's stuff online, you know, during the course of, like, when games are going on. And it's like you just hear, oh, Iowa's playing so poorly. And then you go watch the game back and you're like, I didn't think it was that bad. Like, there's just a couple moments in these first few games where there's lapses, like a big play, corner, miscommunication on the outside, big play over the top. You know, then you got a punt return touchdown. You almost muffed the punt. Like, they haven't been as consistent in the special teams area through the first few games, Iowa, which is kind of something that they hang their hat on. So I look at this game and I go, it's going to be fascinating to see what team you get, because I've always said that, like, the first 3 games, it's always, you know, people are finding themselves or they're not showing much. Now you get into Big Ten play. This is where the schemes amp up, the speed goes up, the talent goes up, the pressure goes up. Like, how are people going to respond? It's going to be a fascinating deal.
Iowa special teams maybe not being as stellar early on as they're used to being. Pretty easily explainable when you think about Torrey Taylor going in the 4th round to the Chicago Bears. Also Cooper DeJean early in the NFL draft. So that makes sense on the special team side. So you mentioned stylistically the teams are a little bit differently offensively. Let's talk about the defense, and specifically, we know Iowa's defense is always really good, but I want to give the Gophers defense some credit. I thought they played pretty darn well against North Carolina, other than some untimely penalties. There was that dropped potential pick 6, but that stuff's going to happen every week, especially when it comes to the dropped potential pick 6. I thought they played pretty darn well against North Carolina. And again, I know it's Rhode Island, and then you take a bit of a step up against Nevada, but you haven't given up a point in a couple weeks. I just think they're playing really well, and I feel like they're playing well earlier in the Heatherman regime than I expected them to be, because typically it takes some time. And this was a defense that, in all honesty, wasn't all that good last year. So I give them props for how they've started the year. And if the Gophers are going to beat Iowa, it's largely going to be because of the defense doing their job.
Well, and it speaks to the foundation that was laid there. Rossi laid that foundation with a lot of the guys that are currently there. And then you bring in somebody who worked with Joe Harris-Samiak, who's on Minnesota staff at Rutgers, when Heatherman was in Rutgers working with him. I think that, they've been able to bring some different elements in, multiple on defense, and some of the package they use, how they feature personnel. I wrote about that on the site. I think that's been the biggest takeaway this far, is like the rotation of people, especially in the defensive backfield. Some of the front stuff they've been doing in passing down situations so that they can get JLR and Smith and Jaw Joyner all on the field at the same time in those situations. And I just think that, like, now it's going to be, let's see how the scheme evolves. Like, every week there's been a little bit something different from an emphasis standpoint schematically. How are they going to continue to raise the bar every week? And when the speed of the teams get better, the physicality, how are you going to respond? I think it's coming down. I mean, this game, Caleb Johnson for Iowa has been outstanding. I mean, he has been so elusive, breaking tackles, finding those cutback lanes in the stretch and wide zone stuff that they love to do. They get the mid zone, the stretch zone, the inside zone stuff, and then they'll give you some gap schemes. So I think, like, Minnesota up front is going to have to be on point to take away the run game, and they're going to have to make Cade McNamara, put together enough plays to win the game through the air. That's kind of going to be the game plan, probably.
Yeah, and I think offensively, Daniel House, this is such master of the obvious to point out, but I think for the Gophers, big key to winning is when you get your opportunities, which might be few and far between. You get inside the 30, you get inside the 20, gotta find a way to get 6 and the extra point for 7 versus settling for 3.
Well, and you look at it, you got to execute when the plays are there. There's been a couple moments in these games where, you got that shot up the seam in the Rhode Island game to Christian Driver in the end zone. Couldn't bring that one in. You look at, like, some of these little execution things that, you can get away with those in the non-conference games against teams that aren't as good. But, like, you have to be able to make every play that's available and execute against a team like Iowa, because the margins are that much thinner when you get into Big Ten play and play all these narrow games.
I won't ask you for a prediction, but do you have, well, I guess maybe I will. Do you have a gut about what happens, a gut feeling about what happens on Saturday evening?
Ross, I honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about these teams yet, because, like I say, the non-conference games, like we discussed, their paths mirror, in, like, how they've been stylistically through the first 3 games, some of the trends. I feel like the big thing is going to be Iowa's defense in this game. Like, I think if Iowa's defense tightens down some of these untimely explosives, Minnesota's going to have to be able to throw the ball down the field to win this game. So I feel like Iowa has a little bit of an edge on the defensive side just because of their personnel. But then I also feel like there's some things that Minnesota is going to be unveiling in this game that are going to make it interesting. So I guess, the 50-50, honestly, the 50-50 is interesting to me that the numbers seem to say that because, there's not enough data points to really make a informed fact-based decision.
Yeah, housekeeping again. ESPN matchup predictor says 50.1% chance for Iowa to win, 49.9% for Minnesota to win. Iowa currently favored by 2.5 points. Also per ESPN, that over-under is 36.5. And I believe a few years ago when these two teams played, didn't we get it down to like 32.5 or 33.5? I should remember that.
It was really low. It was really low. And it's one of those things where first to 20 is probably going to win this game.
36.5 in modern college football is also incredibly low. A very quick look around the Big Ten. We do have some Big Ten matchups, some teams still playing outside of the Big Ten this weekend, but a couple of Big Ten games that I think are easily the best. Friday night, we have Illinois at Nebraska, and also Saturday afternoon, USC and Michigan. I think both of those games have a chance to be wildly fun, if nothing but in the afternoon matchup on Saturday, just to see USC and Michigan play each other in the same conference.
It's exciting. And now you got Michigan making a quarterback change with Alex Orji taking over. Davis Warren was not taking care of the football, and now you bring in someone who has a little mobility, quarterback run component. I think that they're probably going to put in some wrinkles that USC kind of has not scouted up. So I'm kind of watching that game just to see how everything looks. USC, I think, is playing phenomenal. Like, you just look at Miller Moss, what he's been able to do early in the season, one of my favorite quarterbacks thus far in college football. I'm expecting him to continue that trend. You said Nebraska, Illinois, another intriguing game. I mean, Illinois' defense has been playing really well. I thought they did a nice job this offseason in the transfer portal when they lost productive players, replacing them with productive ones. And Nebraska, you look at them, a lot of returning talent, filled in a couple of pieces with the transfer portal, but Dylan Raiola has been, the real big difference here. I mean, he's played really well through these first few games. How does he respond to a defense that is a lot tougher to prepare for and play against? There's a lot of different looks they're throwing at you. You got a lot of man coverage. You're going to put presentations up on the line of scrimmage and bluff out. I'm just interested in how Dylan Raiola responds to his first test against a defense like Illinois'.
And finally, Daniel House, I hate to bring this up, but after what happened at Tennessee last weekend, thoughts and prayers to our guy, Kenny Burns, the former running backs coach, and I believe associate head coach, maybe assistant head coach of the University of Minnesota. After taking one on the chin against Tennessee, oh goody, Kent State gets to go to Penn State this weekend. So good luck.
Yeah, I mean, over $1 million in revenue in each of those games.
Yeah, that's good, though. That's the plus, right? You have to be able to spin that back to your players, though.
It's like $3.75 million in revenue from those three matchups. But yeah, I mean, you look at the box and that second half. I mean, I think it was like minus 17 rushing yards with 12 minutes left in the third quarter, and they didn't even have 100 yards.
Yeah,
I mean, and you're facing a Penn State offense that is so explosive, like 16th, I think, in the FBS and 40+ yard plays offensively thus far. That's definitely a mismatch.
I'm cheering for him, and I hope he's given time. I believe he's now 1-13 or 1-14 at Kent State.
It is a tough spot.
That's a very tough job.
It is, and I mean, that's one of those things where, in this landscape, I think it's even tougher than it even was before. So, Kenny just needs some time to just get some personnel in there to try to get this thing off the ground, and we'll see what happens.
Very quickly, what's at gophersguru.com right now?
Breakdown on the defense, going through some of the looks they were able to use to slow down things Nevada like to do offensively. And then now, hey, we're getting ready for the Iowa week. Iowa preview will be out, so get ready for that. There'll be a lot of insight into what to expect from this game. I guess I'm going to learn a lot too. I don't know. I want to see how both these teams play.
You heard it here first. Daniel House, for the first time ever, going to do some learning versus doing some teaching to all of us. That is Daniel House, MN on the X Machine. I am at the Ross Brendel. Back again in this feed real soon.
Thanks for listening to Minnesota Sports Chat, Presented by Beans Coffee Company. Use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's one word, SPORTSCHAT, to save at checkout. Follow Ross on X at the Ross Brendel. Like and subscribe to Minnesota Sports Chat wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review kindly.